Colombia just denied a preclusion in the case against former President Álvaro Uribe. The former president will have to go to trial for the alleged crimes of procedural fraud and bribery of witnesses. In northern Ethiopia's Tigray region, thousands rallied peacefully to demand the return of people displaced by the two-year war. And the U.S. island of Guam prepares for the arrival of typhoon Mawar. Authorities issued an evacuation order for the most vulnerable population in the coastal regions. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Colombia, a judge denied preclusion in the case against Álvaro Uribe. With this decision, the former president will stand trial for the alleged crimes of witness bribery and procedural fraud. On Tuesday, the day began with the reading of the ruling by the 41st criminal judge of the circuit of Bogota, who will be in charge of defining the judicial future of the former president. The reading of the verdict will also take place on Wednesday, May 24th. The 41st circuit criminal judge will have to decide whether or not to approve this second request for preclusion of the case made by the Attorney General's office. If he decides, as she did, the criminal investigation will cease. That is, it will be accepted that there was no evidence that Uribe committed the crime for which he is accused, and it will not be reopened unless it is considered that there is new evidence. If it is decided that the case is not precluded, as was previously the case, the former president and his lawyers may appeal to the Superior Court of Bogota for a final decision. On Tuesday, the president of Bolivia, Luis Arce, sent a letter to Pope Francis to make him aware of the allegations of sexual abuse and pedophilia against several priests. Arce stated in the letter that this situation has caused deep pain, rejection, and frustration in the Bolivian population. The current pedophilia scandal in this Andean country occurred after the Spanish media, El País, published an investigation into the late Spanish Jesuit Alfonso Pedrajas, whose personal diary mentions sexual abuses committed against dozens of children when he directed the John 23rd High School in the 1970s. Bolivian authorities are also currently investigating allegations against the late Jesuit Luis Roma, whom a former member of the Society of Jesus linked to explicit photographs of sexual assault against minors between the ages of 6 and 12.
I ask that the Bolivian justice system must be able to access all the archives, files, and information regarding these complaints and acts of sexual abuse committed by priests and religious Catholics in Bolivian territory. The Bolivian state reserves the right to decide on whether to allow the entry into national territory of clergy who have this history of sexual abuse against minors.
On Tuesday, the Central Committee of Cuba's Communist Party held its sixth plenary session to evaluate the fulfillment of the economic and social policy guidelines of the organization and the revolution in the current context. Gathered at the Convention Palace in the capital, the party leaders assessed the pending agreements of the previous plenary sessions. The Political Bureau members render an account of its work, and the draft code of ethics of the party members will be submitted to discussion and approval. Likewise, the meeting will present the draft call for the PCC's second national conference to be held in October of this year. A member of the Secretariat of the Central Committee of the PCC and head of the Economic Department, Joel Keipo, pointed out that after the six-party conference and forum, the proposals will be followed up in order to promote greater participation and popular control, as well as more leading role of the party structures at all levels. On Tuesday, a group of Dominicans of Haitian descent held a sit-in the vicinity of the Congress to demand that the cases of statelessness generated by Law 169-14 be resolved. They recognized that the movement, made up of people affected by the denationalization policy, indicated that they choose to protest on Tuesday to mark the 9th anniversary of Law 169-14 of the Constitutional Court, which establishes a special regime for people born in Dominican territory and who were irregularly registered in the civil registry. The movement hopes that the protests will be carried out peacefully. However, they explain that ultranationalist organizations are continuously trying to prevent the demonstrations. The Interior Ministry abruptly closed the office in charge of implementing the law 3 years ago. leaving more than 7,000 people who participated in the naturalization process in limbo and fearing deportation.
Sentence 168.13 says that only those who are born of Dominican parents or a mixed couple are known as Dominicans. But I was born in the Dominican Republic. I don't even know where Haiti is. So if I'm not from here, where am I from?
There is a structural discrimination within the Dominican state, and we are here today because this day marks exactly 9 years after the National Congress passed the law, but the National Congress has not taken the time to oversee this compliance. In 9 years today, there's not a single person naturalized of the 8,000 or so who took advantage of the law, which means that today we are worse off than 9 years ago, and we are here demanding the Congress to oversee.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. Officials at Geneva Airport said demonstrators gathered at the airport's tarmac and briefly disrupted air traffic on Tuesday before operations gradually resumed. The warning came as environmental groups claimed that about 100 climate activists from 17 countries had disrupted the European Business Aviation Convention, an exhibition, Europe's largest private aircraft sales fair. In a joint statement, Greenpeace Stay Grounded, Scientist Rebellion and Extinction Rebellion claimed the activists were peacefully occupying aircraft on display for the event at Geneva Airport. About a dozen police officers quickly intervened to evict the activists, including some who had attached themselves to the planes, according to the ATS news agency. Images released by the activists on Twitter show them sitting at the foot of the planes and displaying banners with slogans such as "Private jets burn our future," "Kill our planet," and "Fuel inequalities." Thousands of Israelis protested on Tuesday against the allocation of funds to ultra-Orthodox Jews in the government's proposed state budget. The demonstration was organized by the same group of activists who have been protesting since January against the government's judicial reform plans, which they view as a threat to democracy. Ahead of the budget vote and bearing Israeli flags, the protesters marched through Jerusalem to Parliament, accusing the ruling coalition of looting the state's money. On Monday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced the state would grant merit ultra-Orthodox Jewish men engaged in religious studies rather than work. The equivalent was $67.5 million. The grant was part of a last-minute deal with United Torah Judaism, one of the ultra-Orthodox coalition parties, to ensure their support for the budget. Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune kicked off on Tuesday a two-day state visit to Portugal. The African leader will meet with Algerian residents, participate in a business forum, and hold discussions with the Portuguese Prime Minister, among other things set to take place during his stay. His delegation includes the Algerian Ministers of Industry, Commerce and Startups, as well as small and medium-sized enterprises. Last week, Portugal's finance minister said his country aims to multiply by 5 its investments in Algeria. Tebboune and his counterpart, President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, should also discuss bilateral issues as well as regional and international developments. Russian President Vladimir Putin held talks with Bosnian Serb leader Milorad Dodik in Moscow on Tuesday and hailed an increase in trade during a meeting that has angered the European Union. According to a statement released by the Kremlin, Putin told Dodik that bilateral trade with the Serb Republic region of Bosnia will, while relatively small, had increased by 57% last year, and affirmed that this trend should certainly be maintained. After the meeting, Dodik told Russian television that the price the Serb Republic paid for gas would remain low, but did not give details. Following a devastating ethnic war in the 1990s, Bosnia was split into 2 autonomous regions, the federation shared by Bosniaks and Croats, and the Serb Republic linked via a weak central government. The meeting could tarnish Bosnia's hopes of joining the European Union, since the head of that body responsible for enlarging the 27-nation bloc warned last week, Sarajevo, that EU allies do not visit Russia. At a press conference during the meeting with President Putin, the President of the Republika Srpska, Milorad Dodik, referred to the pressure from Western partners to join the sanctions against Russia.
I wish this could be all over soon. We share virtues of peace and stability. Because of this, Republic Srpska is exposed to political pressures. We never allowed the enforcement in any shape or form of implementation of any formal decision on sanctions. That means that we were exposed to many different pressures from our Western partners. Many projects are suspended or on hold. But we simply decided to not take part of any hysteria. We think that solutions should be found within the framework of the Russian Federation and Ukraine. We know this is not a Russian war. Instead, it is a conflict brought about by the West, which is using Russia as its tool.
The Russian army eliminated more than 70 Ukrainian nationalists who infiltrated into the Volgorod region, the defense ministry said on Tuesday. The military source specified that after suffering a defeat in the town of Artyomovsk, Ukraine proceeded to carry out terrorist actions against the civilian population, and a unit of the Ukrainian nationalist formation invaded the territory of Russia. During the anti-terrorist operation, aviation, artillery, and units covering the state border of the Western Military District blocked and defeated the nationalists. The rest of the Ukrainian command was driven back to the territory of Ukraine, where they were completely eliminated, the Defense Department detailed. For the time being, the regime of anti-terrorist operations in the region remains active.
In the course of a counter-terrorist operation, the nationalist formations of Ukraine were blocked and destroyed by the airstrikes and artillery fire. Active action by units covering the state's borders of the Western Military District blocked and defeated the nationalist formations. The remaining fighters were driven back to the territories of Ukraine, where they continued to be hit until they were completely eliminated. More than 70 Ukrainian terrorists, 4 armored fighting vehicles, and 5 pickup trucks were destroyed.
teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat. Dial 461 and enjoy Latin American alternative broadcasts. One final short break, we'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back from the south. On Tuesday, thousands of people protested in northern Ethiopia's Tigray region to demand the return of people displaced by a 2-year war. The war between federal troops and their allies from neighboring Eritrea and the Amhara region on one side, and Tigrayan forces on the other concluded with a truce last November after killing tens of thousands of people. Protesters rallied peacefully on Tuesday in several major cities, including the regional capital, Mekelle, Adigrat, and Shire. They held signs with slogans like "Invaders must leave our homeland." Henok Hiluf, who took part in the protests in Mekelle, told the press that about 3,500 to 4,000 people were protesting there. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres called on parties to armed conflicts across the world to prioritize the protection of civilians, since they account for 94% of the victims in populated areas.
But the terrible truth is that the world is failing to live up to its commitments to protect civilians, commitments enshrined in international humanitarian law. Last November, states adopted a political declaration to protect civilians by restricting or refraining from the use of explosive weapons in populated areas. I urge all states to join and turn the declaration into meaningful action. And in December, the Security Council adopted Resolution 2664, which aims to prevent United Nations sanctions from arming civilians and obstructing humanitarian action. I urge all states to implement it and to exclude humanitarian and medical activities from their own counterterrorism and sanctions measures.
India's top female wrestlers led a candlelight march of nearly 1,000 protesters in the capital on Tuesday, demanding the resignation and arrest of the president of the Wrestling Federation for allegedly sexually harassing young athletes. Demonstrators marched to India Gate, a monument close to the country's parliament, with a strong presence of police along the route. Protesters have been staging the rally in the center of New Delhi for nearly a month amid a brutal heatwave while foregoing their training schedules. Two Olympic medalists, Bahram Punia and Sakshi Malik, have threatened to hand back their medals if no action is taken against India's Wrestling Federation president Brish Bhushan Saharan Singh. The 66-year-old president is accused of sexually harassing 7 young female wrestlers, including one minor. Singh, who represents the ruling Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party, has denied the accusations and called the protest politically motivated by the opposition Congress Party. Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang held talks with Dutch Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Wopke Hoekstra in Beijing on Tuesday. In the meeting, Qin highlighted that the Netherlands is an important European partner and stressed that his government is willing to strengthen economic, trade and investment cooperation, deepen cultural and people-to-people exchanges, and advance multilateral cooperation in arms control, cybersecurity and climate change with the European nation. On the other hand, the Dutch foreign minister said that the Netherlands adheres to the One China policy and that was willing to work with the Asian country to uphold market principles, deepen cooperation in agriculture, innovation, and other fields. The Dutch official also affirmed his government's commitment to serving as a facilitator in Europe-China exchanges and hoped that China will play a constructive role for the peaceful settlement of the Ukraine crisis. During the Chinese-Russian Business Forum held in Shanghai, the chairman of Russia's VTB Bank, Andrei Kostin, said the Chinese yuan may replace the US dollar as the world's reserve and settlement currency in the next 10 years. According to Kostin, the monetary and financial system that has predominated for decades ensures the hegemony of the US and its Western allies, and the dollar and the euro account for 3/4 of global settlements. The chairman added that dollar is the world's main reserve currency, but having announced a course of containment of Russia and China, the collective West, and the US in particular, have been actively using their currency as a weapon. Russia has in recent months been strengthening its economic cooperation with China and adopting the yuan currency for trade. In early April, the yuan replaced the dollar as the most traded currency in Russia, and the Chinese currency continues to penetrate a number of other markets around the world. The U.S. island of Guam in the Pacific Ocean is preparing for the arrival of Typhoon Mawar. The Meteorological Department has issued an evacuation order for the most vulnerable population in the coastal regions of the island, since officials expect the storm to cross the island this Wednesday. In their latest report, meteorological authorities have warned that Mawar was approximately 225 kilometers from the coast with winds of around 250 kilometers an hour. Mawar is a Category 4 typhoon and so represents a triple threat due to its strong winds, heavy rains, and coastal flooding. In Mexico, the alert for the activity of the Popocatépetl volcano remains in place, although there has been a decrease in the last few hours. Let's see what activities are still affected in the following material from our correspondent, Daniel Rosas.
The Popocatépetl volcano is still on alert. However, its activity has decreased.
Its intensity has decreased. There is also less ash ejected. And we're watching day and night so that there is no alarm. We're watching.
Airport activities have resumed and the volcanic alert level remains at yellow phase 3, which is precautionary.
Also, all the airlines are already resuming their flights. In some cases, it is not the fault of the Don Goyo, because they have faults.
In the state of Puebla, the most affected by volcanic activity, 57,000 civil contingency.
178 schools have been selected as temporary shelters located in 22 municipalities.
However, experts point out that the recent increase in volcanic activity has been fluctuating since 1994. It is therefore relatively normal.
There are times when the activity is very strong, like in 2000, which was the strongest activity we had. In fact, that was one of the eruptions that was well monitored, and we were very attentive as we are now, and the activity now is not yet at that level.
The authorities are still advising people to protect themselves from the volcanic ash. They should wear protective goggles and use a wet handkerchief to protect their eyes and respiratory tract.
Daniel Rosas, TeleSUR, Ciudad de México.
We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.